those same lines, we start to look at what's a core part, what's not. Has there been any murmurings of potentially updating the tariff to say, these tariff numbers constitute core parts, these tariff numbers constitute non-core? Because ultimately, you get into some of that, and there probably does leave some room for gray, which is where guys like you make good money. And so how exactly does or what maybe are you hearing or seeing that may go one way or the other on that?
Adam, that's a great question. I mean, it's the most common question. I had a meeting with about 80 auto suppliers, our clients, earlier this week. I was at the work truck show in Indianapolis yesterday with a number of companies. And that's the major question is, well, wait a minute, I make this circuit board, I make this. What level of specificity am I going to have? The answer is, for the top tier parts, the core parts, 75%, it's pretty clear what they are, right? If you're making the chassis, the transmission, you're in, right? But moving down, I agree with you, it's gray area. And actually that gray area isn't where we like to play, because, what makes us successful is your companies are growing and thriving and expanding. If we're spending all our time in compliance, then that's not good for anybody. So that will all have to be spelled out in the uniform regulations. The working assumption right now is the methodology that we use for determining RVC or net cost, et cetera, will continue in defining those parts. But I think, Adam, you've shown tremendous foresight here. At the end of the day, the customs regs are going to have to be updated, right? They're going to have to start listing it out by tariff code class, HTS code, because if they don't, there's going to be, you're just going to see a flood of opinions requests and classification ruling requests coming. So I think the idea now is what we're recommending everybody do is, if you think you're in one of those tiers with heightened levels, and virtually everybody will, is to really know what your component is, know where everything is, know what your exposure is, and just hold that for now until we can see and say, geez, if this is going to be set, or if all of a sudden this pushes me outside where now I have a non-conforming good, or I can't rely on NAFTA zero tariffs, and start doing that cost benefit, and then we can say that's an area we need to focus on in the uniform regulations to make sure that your component stays in NAFTA compliance or USMCA.
And what kind of gets really interesting around that is, while the president can claim to can do 232, 301, he can't change the tariff as far as the actual HTS number that's used. So that in and of itself is a whole separate process, which I think this all gets really interesting when you start to think about it at that level and trying to really update that tariff for something that's very specific to NAFTA or USMCA now.
Right. Is it going to be 8 digit? It's going to be at the 10 digit level. You get
right.
into all of those things. I think it's going to be a very tricky scenario. And that's why we're telling people to keep an eye out. I didn't mention during the main part of the presentation, but whether it's Boston Consulting Group or AutoSoft or Auto Forecast Solutions, the analysts that track the supply chain, their prediction is that roughly 40% of auto parts are out of compliance with the new USMCA, and that's a larger number than I thought. But I will say, everybody thinks it's workable. It's just, how do we get there? And that's where there's going to have to be vigilance on everybody's part here.
No, I agree. We have a lot of customers that flirt currently with that 62.5% line, that they're really having to look at their sourcing today to say, I get that I'm okay today, but when this rolls in maybe end of 19, probably realistically at the earliest sometime in 2020, how have I already updated my supply chain, or have I made the business decision not to? And right now that's been a tough ask of some of our customers, and it's something that we're pushing a lot of them to do, because when this happens, when this rolls in and 62.5% doesn't qualify, somebody's done this legwork, right? Someone's gone out, right. Someone's doing this legwork. So simply from a running your business standpoint, I see a lot of value in, connecting with your broker, whether it's us or not, connecting with your trade counsel, really starting to look through some of this, because preparedness for this is not only a good compliance thing, it's also a good business practice. And I think that's really where, probably a lot of folks on this call who are in that compliance world, who tend to be a cost center a lot, right? This is where you start to really can show guys your value to, from that perspective, to the organization on kind of helping you become potentially more competitive when this switches, and push out a competitor who maybe didn't do their due diligence starting now.
I would add to that too. That is a great point. And I think too, is even if you're not caught up in this, keep in mind that there's going to be vigilance by USCBP and CBSA and others on this, right? So we're going to see enhanced compliance or enhanced monitoring when USMCA rolls out. So, the idea that it's just going to be like it is now after we have a new set of rules is there may be some phase-ins. My view is they'll probably have, like we always do, kind of a soft period where soft enforcement at first, just because it is going to be challenging. But then there's going to be a period where everybody's going to have to be deemed in compliance, and if you're not, you're getting bounced. And you're going to start that cost center component. All of a sudden, you've now triggered compliance audits, fees, and all of that. And we all know other parts of the company don't necessarily like that. So that's the other part that I think where preparedness comes into play, is that there's going to be enhanced enforcement on this. There's no question about that.
Absolutely.